مشتاق لا تنمي هذه أنوار ذي سلمي عن قليل أنت في الحرم عند خير العرب والعجم
قف أمام القابر بالأدب
من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الفاتحة بنية التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء على الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله مرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وعلى ما نوى نبينا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى المسائل الصالحين وعلى ما نوى شيخ المؤلف الحبيب أحمد بن زين الحبشي وشيخنا الحبيب أحمد بن الحبشي إلى غير خيرة لفنيتهم وعملنا في أعمالهم وأخلاقنا في أخلاقهم وطريقتنا في طريقتهم من قبول وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. سر الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين واغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين آمين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم انفعنا وزدنا علما. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. Okay, so last week we did the conditions of validity for the ghusl, the purificatory bath, and for ablution for wudu. Yeah, so they're the same thing, 15 conditions for both the ablution, wudu, and the bath, right, the obligatory purificatory bath. Okay, so today we'll go into the next small section, short section of the book. Okay, Habib Ahmad bin Zain says, he carries on. قال رضي الله عنه ونفعنا به وبعلومه وبعلوم شيخنا في الدارين آمين. وإن كان عليه جنابة من مجامعة أو خروج مني بنوم أو غيره لازمه غسل جميع بدنه مع نية رفع الجنابة. Okay, so if one is in a state of janaba, okay, because of sexual intercourse or because of the emission, through the emission of sexual fluid, whether male or female, during sleep, whether it occurs during sleep or otherwise outside of sleep, then it is obligatory to wash the whole body with the intention of lifting the state of major ritual impurity. Okay. When we say emission of sexual fluid here, we mean ejaculation. Okay, whether male or female. Yeah, means ejaculation meaning at the point of climax. Okay, there are different kinds of sexual fluid. Okay, or fluid that is related or associated with intercourse. So we will specify exactly what kind of sexual fluid is meant here, right, which obliges janaba. Okay, so here Habib Ahmad bin Zain has mentioned 2 of the 6 causes of major ritual impurity. Okay, or hadath, major hadath. Okay, major hadath al-akbar. Yeah. So this hadath is a spiritual state, right? Not in the sense of in the sense that it prevents the valid performance of prayer. Yeah. Okay, so not just prayer, tawaf, circumambulation around the Kaaba, carrying the Quran, okay, reciting touching the Quran, okay, reciting the Quran, okay, at least for the major hadath. Okay, but basically it prevents, it's obligatory to lift the hadath, to remove the state of remove oneself from the state of hadath, right, to purify oneself, right, to be able to pray, to touch or recite the Quran, to tawaf, etc. Okay, so here Habib Ahmad Mizin mentions only two. Okay, and so we will cover a bit more in depth only these two. Yeah. Okay, so first of all, okay, the first reason, the first reason which obliges a major a purificatory bath, right, or ghusl. Okay, the first of these is sexual intercourse. Okay. Okay, the second of it is emission of sexual fluid. Okay, and the remainder of the six are death, the end of the woman's menstrual period, the end of her postnatal bleeding, and after giving birth. Okay, so of these six, three of these are shared between male and female. Okay, whether having reached the age of puberty, whether having reached puberty or not, and three are specific to females. Okay, to females. Okay, so the first, sexual intercourse and emission of sexual fluid, and death, of course, are shared between the sexes. And the end of menstruation and postnatal bleeding and giving birth these are female phenomena. Yeah. Okay. So with regards sexual intercourse, right, this is defined as the insertion of the khashafa into the farj. Okay, even without ejaculation. Okay, I'm using the Arabic terms here because they are more precise. It's easier to just put the Arabic terms there and explain, right, rather than have an ambiguous English translated term. Okay, so the khashafa is the head of the penis, the head of the male organ. So if this is the male organ, only the top, only this part, yeah, the head of it is the khashafa. Okay, where people are circumcised. Okay, not the rest, right? Not the rest of the organ. Okay. Okay, so intercourse is the insertion of the khashafa into the farj, even without ejaculation. Okay, so even if there is no ejaculation, as long as the head of the khashafa, yeah, goes fully into the farj, then it becomes an obligation to then one has entered, one has come, has now is in a state of hadath, and it is obligatory to remove that major hadath, major ritual impurity. So this is not minor ritual impurity. Minor ritual impurity, what causes minor ritual impurity, we will talk about in the following section, right? The nullifiers of ablution. Okay, when one does not have ablution, then one is in a state of minor ritual impurity, hadath al-asghar. Okay, the lesser hadath. Okay, and when one any one of these six causes, of major ritual impurity, one performs or has been involved or has experienced one of these six, then one is in a state of major ritual impurity. Okay, so it does not it's not sufficient for a wudu, right? But one must take the purificatory bath, yeah, for one of these six. Okay, so insertion is not sufficient. Touching the farj is not sufficient. It must actually be inserted, right? The head of the penis, the head of the male organ must be, the khashafa must be inserted into the farj. Okay, and it must be to the point that it's not obligatory to wash. Yeah. Okay, so it is obligatory to wash parts, right? For when we are removing filth from our bodies, right? Whether in front or behind, okay, or when we are having the purificatory bath, it is obligatory for us to remove the filth, whatever filth that remains, right, on the parts of the body, whether in front or behind, right? All is obligatory to remove all the filth, okay, anything that is on the parts that are exposed when we squat to relieve ourselves. Okay, so for example, you know, when we stand up, the buttocks come together, but when we squat, then they come apart, and all that is revealed, right, around that area of the anus, right, that is obligatory to wash. Okay, similarly with the female genitals, yeah, so whatever is revealed when one squats to relieve oneself, right, all of those parts are obligatory to wash, all of those parts. Yeah, and now the insertion of the khashafa must go beyond those parts. Okay, it must go beyond that which is revealed and that which is exposed when one squats to relieve oneself. Okay, so when that happens, then that is considered the insertion of the khashafa into the farj. Okay, and even without ejaculation, it is then on an obligatory bath, purificatory bath is then obligatory. It is wajib to make the ghusl, okay, at that point. Okay, now the farj specifically, there is a technical, technically it means everything that is considered an orifice. Okay, so this includes whether the orifice is in front, okay, in the sense of for females, or behind, right, which both males and females have. Okay, whether this orifice belongs to a human or an animal, okay, whether to a living or a dead person. Okay, so insertion into any orifice, okay, given these variables, right, whether in front or behind, human or animal, living or dead, yeah, these are all considered insertion of the khashafa into a farj. Okay, the second cause of janaba, making obligatory a purificatory bath, okay, the ghusl, is the emission of sexual fluid. Yeah. So emission of sexual fluid, okay, so because the Prophet ﷺ says that we take wudu, right, we take ablution from madhi, right, which is one of the sexual fluids that is associated with arousal, okay, but we bathe, or we take the purificatory bath, right, because of mani. Okay, so mani is the sexual fluid that we're talking about, whether male or female, whether ejaculation, whether from male or female. Okay, the Arabic name, okay, of this fluid, right, or ejaculate, is mani. Okay, so this is what makes obligatory, makes wajib the purificatory bath. Okay, so emission, meaning it must, when we say emission of sexual fluid, of course, then it means that the fluid must emerge from the interior to the exterior, from inside to outside. Okay, so for example, if there is a scenario where one reaches climax, okay, there's a scenario where one reaches climax and ejaculates, but the mani, right, remains within the shaft, okay, within the shaft of the male or female organ, okay, and does not come out to that part again, as I mentioned earlier, that part which is obligatory to wash when one squats to relieve oneself. Okay, so that's an important limit to take note of. Okay, so for the female, yeah, for the male, of course, if it does not, as long as it does not come out of the head of the penis, the khashafa, right, as long as it remains inside, yeah, and not has not emerged, then the bath has not become obligatory. Okay, it only becomes obligatory at the point, at which the ejaculate is emitted, or excreted from, or comes out of the head of the khashafa. Okay. Okay, so emission of sexual fluid. Okay, if one is in a state of janaba because of sexual intercourse, or because of emission of sexual fluid, okay, during sleep or otherwise. Yeah. So it's possible that, of course, that this comes out during sleep. Okay. And in the event that it comes out during sleep, then what happens? How do we know, that this is sexual fluid? Right? There are certain conditions, certain characteristics, okay, which I will cover later on, a bit later on. Okay, and during sleep, when one finds ejaculate, okay, one is obliged to take a bath if that ejaculate that one finds is on a bed, on a mattress, okay, or on some clothing that no one no one but oneself uses. Okay, nobody else uses. Okay, only. So if somebody wakes up and finds, turns around and sees that there's some sexual fluid on the mattress that only he uses, then that person is obliged to take a purificatory bath, okay, to take the ghusl. Okay, or suddenly one finds some fluid on shorts or on boxers or whatever it is that only he wears, right? Then one is obliged to take a purificatory bath. Okay, so that's in the event of finding out about it, right? Finding out about it having come out during sleep. Okay, so otherwise, so it also comes out outside of sleep and outside of sexual intercourse. Yeah. Okay, so that's what Habib Ahmad bin Zain is referring to, right, with غيره, right, بغيره, right, خروج mani بغيره. So that this is whether this is well, okay, so if it comes out outside of sexual intercourse and outside of sleep, okay, for obvious reasons, yeah, then what happens is one must check, it should fulfill 3 distinguishing characteristics. Okay, so this mani should fulfill 3 distinguishing characteristics. Right? Mani is not madhi, okay, and it's not wadi. Okay, so these are the 3 sexual fluids, okay, that are associated, fluids that are emissions, liquid emissions, right, from the private parts. Yeah. Okay, and mani is the one right now we are concerned with the emission of mani. Okay, but because mani and wadi and sometimes they can be confused, so it's important to note the characteristics of mani. Okay, so mani, right, male or female sexual fluid. Okay, there are 3 distinguishing characteristics of mani. First of all, it comes in spurts or contractions, right, and leaves one with a relaxed feeling. Okay, secondly, it brings sexual gratification. Okay, there is shahwa, the climax. Okay. Thirdly, it has a smell. Okay, from its smell. So when moist, it smells like bread dough, and when dry, it smells like egg white. Okay, so spurts, gratification, and its smell. If it has even one characteristic, okay, if one of these characteristics is present, then that is considered mani, and therefore the obligatory bath, the purificatory bath, is wajib. The ghusl is wajib. Okay, and if it does not fulfill even one, then it is not considered. If it does not fulfill even one of these characteristics, not even one of these characteristics is present, then that liquid is not considered sexual fluid, right? And the purificatory bath is not wajib. So the ghusl is not wajib if it does not fulfill these conditions. So these are important conditions to take note of. The common sense, but it's important to distinguish between between mani and madhi, especially and wadi as well. So madhi, other than mani, right, we have also emitting from the sexual organs, from the male and the female organs, we have madhi. Okay, so madhi is thin, sticky, yellowish to white, right, fluid that is emitted on arousal. Okay, so pre-sexual fluid, right, if you will. Yeah, it's emitted on arousal, but its emission does not. There's no sexual gratification. Okay, when madhi comes out, there is no sexual gratification in the same way that there is when mani is emitted. Okay, with the spurts. Yeah. Okay, so madhi does not. There are no spurts. Okay, there's no sexual gratification, and there's no smell. Okay, so next there is, we also have another kind of fluid that is emitted, is wadi. Okay, so wadi is a thick, cloudy, white fluid. Okay, so well madhi is thin, it's the thin fluid. So madhi is a thick, right, cloudy white fluid. It's not clear. Okay, so madhi sometimes is yellowish or clear, right, but madhi is cloudy. Okay, it's white fluid, and it's discharged after urination. Okay, after urinating or after carrying heavy things, carrying heavy loads. Okay, and wadi is maybe a couple of drops, okay, or so. So it's not very much. Okay, so the difference between mani and madhi and wadi is that madhi and wadi, they oblige wudu. Okay, not strictly speaking, does not become wajib to perform wudu, but meaning they break wudu. Yeah, so when they come out, they are liquids coming out of the private parts, okay, the sexual organs. They break wudu. Okay, mani rather does not break wudu. Okay, mani does not nullify ablution, but it obliges the purificatory bath. It makes wajib the ghusl. Okay, but it does not, the passing or the emission of mani does not make it wajib. Right, does not break one's wudu. Okay. Okay, so now what do we do if we are unsure? Right, so if someone is unsure whether what has come out is mani or madhi, for example. Okay, so in that case, one is able to choose. Okay, one is unsure in spite of the distinguishing characteristics of mani, right? Knowing what the characteristics of mani are, right? One is then able to choose. Okay, if despite that one is still not sure whether what has come out is mani or madhi, then one is able to choose which, if one decides that it is, okay, as I mentioned earlier, not without those indicting circumstances, okay, that I mentioned earlier, right, that one finds this fluid on one's personal, exclusive clothes or mattress. Okay, so in these circumstances, when one is not able to tell whether it is mani or madhi, then one can decide, and one can either, if it's madhi, then one washes and takes wudu, right? And if it's mani, then one washes and performs the purificatory bath, right, the ghusl. Okay, but ideally, to be safe, it's better to wash and then perform the bath anyway. Okay, whether or not it's clear, whether or not one thinks it's mani or madhi. Okay, so the second part of this section, right, is obligatory to wash the whole body with the intention of lifting the state of major ritual impurity. Okay, so here we're talking about the bath itself. Okay, so earlier we were talking about the factors or the reasons which make the bath obligatory. Okay, yeah, and now we're talking about the bath itself. Yeah, so these are the arkan, the integrals of the bath. So it's obligatory first of all, to make the intention of the bath. Okay. Okay, so what is the bath? The definition of the bath is, first of all, is that one runs water, right, washes the whole body with water, right, on the intention of, right, or with the intention of lifting the state of major ritual impurity. Okay, so that's the definition of the purificatory bath. Yeah, and it has only 2 obligatory integrals. Okay, but of course the 15 conditions of validity, right, the shurut, the conditions that we discussed in the last session, right, those must all be fulfilled, right, in the same way they must be fulfilled for ablution or wudu. Yeah, so they all apply for the bath. Yeah, and conditions, right, are things that requirements, right, that must be fulfilled from before the bath and throughout the bath. Okay, throughout the action. Okay, and if at any one point one ceases to be one condition, one of the 15 ceases to be fulfilled, right, or is abandoned or nullified, then the bath becomes nullified. Okay, so it's important to review the 15 conditions from last week. Okay, so first of all, one makes the intention of the purificatory bath, right. There are various intentions. Okay, so one can intend the lifting of janaba, right, the lifting of major ritual impurity, or lifting of janaba, or the lifting of major ritual impurity. Okay, or nawaitu fardal ghusli. Okay, just the obligatory bath. Okay, so the obligatory bath or the lifting of janaba would not, obviously, it's easy. It's best to just take the general intention, okay, which is nawaitu fardal ghusli. Yeah, and this should cover all the 6 causes except for the death. Right? For death, it's sunnah for someone else to make the intention. The intention will be a bit more specific to that. Okay, but generally when oneself is making the intentions, then it's easier to just memorize nawaitu fardal ghusli. Okay, Allah Ta'ala. Okay, so one intends the purificatory bath or the lifting of the state of major ritual impurity or menstruation, or to be permitted to perform the prayer. Okay, for those who have ended menstruation or postnatal bleeding, or birth, or janaba as well. Okay. Okay, so in the case of bathing, it's not sufficient. Okay, in the case of wudu, for example, we can just intend nawaitul wudu, right? Okay, because wudu is by default, in essence, it is an act of worship. Okay, when one takes ablution, it is essentially an act of worship. So it's sufficient to in terms of the intention and the conditions of the validity of the intention that we spoke about earlier, right? It's sufficient to say nawaitul wudu, because wudu is by default already an act of worship that does not need to be distinguished from customary acts. Okay, but that is not the case for the bath. So the bath, nawaitul ghusl, I intend the bath, right, I intend to bathe alone, does not suffice. Okay, so then one must specify that I intend to lift major ritual impurity or janaba or the obligatory bath. Yeah. So that is when the intention will be valid. Okay, so now, for example, one intends other than what is the case. Okay, so one, for example, the one who is bathing, to lift a state of janaba, to lift the state of janaba, intends, right, instead that intends the bath as to bathe for the end of menstruation, for example. Okay, one is in a state of janaba but intends the bath as the bath for the end of menstruation, for example. Okay, then in that case there are 2 scenarios. So if it's unintentional, then the state of major ritual impurity is lifted. The janaba is lifted, although one in fact unintentionally made the intention of washing oneself for the end of menstruation, right? If it's unintentional, then the janaba is lifted. But if it's intentional, meaning there is some tomfoolery, someone is trying to play the fool, then that janaba is not lifted. Okay, it's only lifted if one is in a state of janaba and accidentally makes the intention that I want to bathe, to lift, to remove the state of major ritual impurity from menstruation, right, from myself. Okay, so first of all, one makes the intention. Of course, the place of the intention, right, should be at the first, when the water first falls on one's head, right? So at that point, one should make one's intention. Okay, and as we've discussed earlier, also the place of the intention is not on the tongue. The tongue is a sunnah. It's sunnah to utter it on the tongue, but the place of the intention is in the heart. So if the intention is not made in the heart, okay, or is made after, for example, so the water is already on one's face and goes down, right, and water is already down here, for example, right, on one's chest, then one makes the intention. Then whatever is above one's chest, right, hadath has not been lifted from all those parts, because when the water was running down it, it was not it was not accompanied by the intention. The intention was only made at the chest level. Yeah? So what is above the chest level, all that the hadath has not been lifted from those parts. Okay, so the intention should be made at the beginning, first falling of water on one's head, right, and the spreading of water downwards all the way, right, so that the hadath will be properly lifted. Okay, and it should be made in one's heart. Yeah. Okay, so finally, the second integral of the wash is to wash the whole body. Yeah, of course, with the paying attention to the 15 conditions of validity of the purificatory bath, right, which we have discussed last week. So there should not be things which block the water from reaching the skin. There should not be things that change the state of the water, from pure and purifying to only pure, right, like soap, for example. Okay, so if one is going to have a bath, for example, then one should, after washing, removing filth from oneself, right, cleaning oneself of filth completely, then when the water first touches, nowadays we all have showers, right? So when the water first touches, first falls on one's head, then that should be the point at which one intends the purificatory bath, and then make sure that water reaches every part, right, every single part and hair of the body, okay, except for the inside of the eye and the mouth, and these are not obligatory, but every bit of skin and hair, right, should be washed, right, as well. Of course, the parts, we should pay attention, of course, to the as I mentioned earlier, the male and female genitalia, the parts which are exposed when one squats to relieve oneself. Right, one should squat, right? Ideally, it'd be advisable to squat during the shower and to wash all of that, right? What is revealed, yeah. And if one happens to be slightly chubby or with layers of fat, right, then one should lift up those layers and wash in between the layers to make sure that water reaches every part of skin, and behind the knees, and all the difficult or isolated or forgotten about parts. Yeah. So every single part of the body, right, every single bit of hair and skin should be washed, right, and I'm not going to continue dwelling too much on this. The conditions to make sure, if you want to check, right, whether the bath should be valid, the conditions that regulate whether the bath is valid or not have been discussed last week. So those 15 conditions, right, or rather 13 or 15, yeah, together with the 2 for those who have chronic annulment. Okay, so those conditions have been discussed last week, so please check. So basically, one has to wash the whole body, right, and not leave any part unwashed. Okay, in fact, Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu wajhah alayhi salam, he said that he treated his hair as an enemy, right? Sayyidina Ali, in fact, he shaved his head. He shaved his head to the skin. He kept no hair, right? Because when they heard the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if anyone in janaba leaves a spot equal to the breadth of a hair without washing it, right, such and such an amount of hellfire will have to be suffered for it, right? Will be designated for that spot. And when Sayyidina Ali heard that, then he decided, right, on that account, he said, on that account I treated my hair as an enemy, and so he used to shave his head, alayhi salam. Okay, so inshallah next week we will carry on with the nullifiers of ablution. Wa'alafu minkum wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa ala hadrat nabi sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka
يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول يا رب